Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Authors on Mission. So first things first, I'm going to give you a little image here. Picture that you're watching the world's most elite Formula One race. The cars are in identical designs. The track is the same for everybody, but one driver consistently crosses the finish line first. So what's the difference? It's not the car, but the driver and the team behind them. Our guest today is Chad E. Cooper, who, funny enough, describes himself as working with clients who are like Formula One race cars and positions himself as the F1 race car captain. I share that anecdote because it's just a great way to describe a little bit of what he does here. And we are going to be chatting a bunch about his book, Time Isn't the Problem, You Are, in addition to all the other services he offers. He is known as the status quo disruptor. He has a transformation from stuck to unstoppable, and it really just holds the keys to understanding how to break through the emotional and operational ceilings that limit human potential. But that's just the bare minimum here, so you're in for a big treat, everybody. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Chad Cooper onto the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm excited to be able to create some impact and hit some finish lines to help people out.
I love that, and I love that you wrote that metaphor back in. Fan of metaphors and puns and everything in between, so really cool there. So yeah, I think it's really important that we start off with the fact that you've worn so many hats in your life. You've been from Marine to Microsoft executive, even a mayor and a pro athlete. So please tell us a little bit more about this.
Well, we were talking behind the scenes there about what the conversation would be, and I guess it would be appropriate to maybe begin with how the book even came about. When I was probably about 19 years old, I've had the dream to work with or have conversations with a certain number of people. But working with, one was Bill Gates, another was Tony Robbins, and I've had the privilege of working for both of them. And I was the number one coach for Tony's organization for many years. And so I've had the privilege of working with billionaires, professional athletes, Olympic athletes, Formula One, those kind of scenarios. But it really began probably when I was, 18 or 19 years old. And I was listening on cassette tape to Personal Power before it was even Personal Power 2. And really creating the dream, Danielle, of what did I want my future to look like? What did I want to have in my life by the age of 40? And I accomplished that at 35 years old when I retired from Microsoft Corporation. And I retired on the same day that Bill Gates retired. And I found myself very quickly after about 3 months after going, oh crap. Now what am I going to do? Because I'm not the retiring kind of person, right? Retiring, and I got challenged by a lot of friends, and they're like, well, you're not on the golf course. You're not sitting on the couch watching football and drinking beer. And I said, would you? And they're like, well, no. And what I found was that retirement isn't about actually being inactive. It's actually about living life on your terms and creating a schedule or a calendar based on your terms. And so I said, God willing, I've got 50, maybe 60 years in front of me or more, hopefully. What do I want to do? Because I have still more years left than I've used. And so I actually reverse engineered what I created when I was 19 and came up with the book, Time Isn't the Problem.
I love that. And, thank you, because that answer you gave to my question kind of outlines a bunch of what you've done in the past, but definitely leads us right to the book itself. So, everybody kind of has a different path to how they got involved and invested in writing. And for you, it seems that it was really just about being inspired and having something to say that has to be written down. In this case, your life philosophies. Would you agree with that? Or is it a little bit more than that, would you say?
I would say it would be part inspired. I think that is an ingredient that has to go hand in hand for anybody to have the wherewithal to go through that process. I would also say I also learned from Stephen King, who is, author of many books. and understanding that he never sat behind a typewriter. Really, he didn't sit behind and write out his books. He dictated them. And so one of the things is honoring what is the natural gift or the natural ability of how you allow your creativity to be expressed. And for me, sitting down and writing it was not going to be effective. So there was an inspiration, but there was also a platform that it created that really invited that creativity and really invited the answers to come out. And that was actually sitting in a Hollywood studio for 3 days and just being filmed and talking. Now, a lot of great things happen with that. One, you get a copy of everything you did. You get the video content that you can repurpose, and then you can actually use that to help create membership programs or other uses, right? So I found in doing that, that allowed me to just really capture, and the challenge that I see is we can be inspired, Danielle, but we also will create blocks in trying to filter while we're being creative, right? Imagine Monet or, a great artist trying to edit in the process of expressing their art. And that's one of the challenges that I see is that we're judging our creativity in the process of trying to unfold it or just let it come out. And so I understood a process that would serve me. And then third was really having a bigger, it was more desperation than inspiration, right? It was more selfish of like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And so I found a formula that I could repeat, and I have done that for 5 decades now.
Right, right. And this formula that you're mentioning, well, before we go into the formula too much,
Sure.
I do want to take a note about what you just said there is, the idea of dictating, which is a thing that when you think of writing, you don't usually associate with it. Writing is writing. It's a pen and paper, it's keyboards, it's typing. But you're absolutely right. It's a matter of just speaking the words out loud and letting, whatever flows out of you kind of be the content. And that I can see how that drives the direction of the book, probably more so than outlining every chapter. I'm definitely an outline person, but it's great to know that it really did come from the heart and your mind, which is really cool to know. Was there any challenge though in kind of organizing that after the fact? I can only imagine it.
Well, this was before AI existed, long before AI existed. And so part of the challenge is when you give yourself permission to be creative, to be an artist, and I believe that there's an artist and creator in each of us, right? I have one brother that is an incredible graphic artist. I can't do a stick figure, okay? So I don't try to be what I'm not gifted in doing. But I have my own way of being creative and becoming an artist. And so in that is really kind of the analogy of going into a kitchen and just making a mess, experimenting, right? Is like if you're trying to like, oh, let me get it all right on the first draft, you're probably not going to create amazing recipes. Or at least I can't. I don't have that talent. So I just go in and give myself permission to go make a mess. Just experiment, right? Like the mad scientist. Then I can figure out and work through, okay, let me move these pieces around or let me, adjust things. And so that process is once you have it, then you get the transcript. And from there, I worked with somebody who does mind mapping to be able to say, okay, what are all the components? What's the core central theme? And so I really honored, and again, this was before J.K. Rowling, but this analogy works, is she wrote Harry Potter with the ending first and then worked backwards. And so if you know how it is going to end, and in my case was creating freedom for people, creating true liberation and freedom, then I could structure the chapters and the modules and the framework around that ending.
I like that a lot, thinking of the goal at the end, what we need to achieve. It's really cool. And I think that for any writers out there, it should be something that you try out too, because if you know how you want it to end up, then why not go backwards? Although if you're keeping up with that race car analogy, you don't usually go backwards from the finish line, but...
Well, but they do.
Oh,
and that's where I got the metaphor from.
Wait a minute. Please, they go backwards on the finish line. Do I not know about that?
Not on the finish line, but they know what their destination is.
Oh,
so if you look at all professional athletes, I'll use the easiest, is if you say, I'm going to go out for a run, you first have to say, what's the objective? What's the destination? Is it 5K? Is it a marathon? Is it a half marathon? What is the destination? If I know the distance, then I can work everything backwards. It's a lot easier. If I'm going to run a marathon, I know that I can then create a 12-week program backwards and how much distance I need week by week. I know what my fueling needs to be before the starting gun goes off. So imagine if you don't know the distance. Imagine you're going to drive a Formula One race and you don't know how many laps. How do I know how much fuel? How do I know when to change the tires? So if I know the distance or I know the destination, I can create the fueling, I can create the pit stops, I can create the tire change, all of it backwards, knowing where those mile markers are. So I'm not just strategic, but I'm tactically making those pit stops to gain advantage over my competitors.
That is absolutely brilliant. I think it's a great way for anybody to start planning their book, whether you're outlining it or just, maybe dictating it. Like you mentioned, if you know the main point or what it is you need the readers to get to, then you're better able to meet that goal and that target audience. So that's really good. That's it for everyone to listen to today. All that being said now, Chad, I think now is a good time to segue into that framework we were talking about. Is this a little bit different than The Alchemist, or is it quite the same?
An alchemist is I think a brilliant word for magician, right? In the mystical, those kind of things. And so when we look at one of the greatest alchemists that people can think of, or maybe not, but is Merlin, right? Merlin the magician, who was the alchemist for King Arthur. And what we knew about Merlin was that he would take ingredients in organic ingredients and combine them to create powerful formulas. And so really writing is, I think, the art of being an alchemist, right? What are the right ingredients that are going to create a powerfully impactful book or content for somebody? And one of the things that we have as part of the alchemist is the pain in experimenting, the courage to experiment, and the pain in getting it right and getting it wrong. And I see that being an author is very much like an alchemist. Is, are you willing to go through the pain? One of the formulas for success, not just in being an author, but in working with financial titans, working with world title professional athletes, working with multi-gold medal Olympic athletes, is they all understand they need to make friends with pain. Pain is not something to be afraid of. Pain is a megaphone of pay attention. Something needs to change, something needs to start, something needs to stop, something needs to be modified or tweaked. And so if we understand as an alchemist, it's a critical ingredient to success, then we actually are not going to just create something that is noise, white noise that everybody else is saying, right? Are you able to connect with the pain or the discomfort of your readership and then offer a solid prescription? So yeah, I would say that it is very much an alchemist.
Understood, right? Because I know that's one of the, one new thing that you've become. It's a platform, you mentioned to me it's about unfolding your outcomes. I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, but we have here the visionary transformer, the status quo disruptor, the experimental guide. I understand this might not be related to your book, but this is what you're all about, and you've been helping so many clients through these different methods. Could you please tell me a little bit more about what exactly are these options? Are these goals we're setting for people? I'm interested to know a little bit more about these.
Well, my approach is a little bit of an alchemist, right? A little bit of the really visionary transformer. And that's really to see what is the way through that is maybe going against the status quo, right? What is the approach that allows the unconventional integration or the alchemy of emotional mastery, of spiritual alignment, and of optimization in your skill set or your expertise? When we combine those, what I found is that there is ancient wisdom. So I've had the privilege through my foundation for 20 years or so working with indigenous tribes. And they still hold the template to things that we've forgotten. Okay, let me say that again. We have forgotten what we've forgotten. And so the visionary transformer is not always about just like what's the new cool latest and greatest like thought leader that's out there, but maybe going back historically and saying what has stood the test of time that people have forgotten, and how do I bring that into maybe the operational precision or the modern equivalent of psychology and spirituality? Then the second piece is the rebel, not for the sake of just being, a jerk or being angry, but actually because you know that the current way is broken and that you need to get past social appropriateness. You need to get past social indoctrination or religious, limitations that may be standing in your way, and be willing to say, we need to dismantle what's not working and have the courage to blaze a new way forward that actually creates a life that is aligned, evolved, and intentional to your goals. And then lastly is the sage, right? Where in the sage do we actually go in and say, if your business is growing but your soul is shrinking, we need to talk, right? The sage is saying growth for the sake of growth is the ideology of a cancer cell. You don't want to just grow for the sake of growth. It's like, what's the destination? Why are you doing this? And what's the wisdom that allows us to maybe not have to reinvent the wheel, but take from the success of others before us? So that's the bringing those three elements in is really what creates the results. And ultimately, that's really a big part of the book, is that I go against the conventional wisdom today, and I go in and really invite people in to say, what do they really want?
Definitely. Thank you for that explanation. I'm glad to know that it does relate back to the writing process of, time isn't the problem. And even more so, I can see how this really would help anybody, whatever type of walk of life they might be in. What would you call these if you were to categorize them? Philosophies?
A little bit of philosophy.
Okay, I'm trying to think of what the name is. The
A little bit of philosophy, a
Alchemist.
little bit of really real life experience, right? So
Right.
a lot of this, as I said in the, how the book came about, is my life, my lived life experiences. And I would also say the ability to earn scars as well as cross-cultural insights. So some of it's philosophy, some of it's just experience, not just for myself, but because I am part of the oldest in first indigenous tribe in New Zealand, a Maori tribe, because I work in Central America for the last 20 years, because I have a very diverse background and family members from other countries that have immigrated in, I have a diversity perspective that creates a strength, right? Mm-hmm. So bringing all of those elements together, it's allowed me to take some experience from the military, from my faith-based beliefs, from other people's perspectives, and be able to integrate them to say what works and what doesn't. And so ultimately, here's what I came up with, Danielle. The path that we take may be unique, like a fingerprint, but the obstacles that we will face are relatively common or relatively the same to everyone. So if we know what those obstacles are, then we actually know the tool set and the skill set that will allow us to navigate them. When we'll hit them depends on your pathway, but you pretty much know you're going to hit them.
Right, definitely. And I have 2 points to make about this then. The first one is, well, this is a very unique approach. It's not the traditional, step-by-step framework that everybody puts in their nonfiction books, right? It's more something that you have to own yourself, I'd say, and something that you have to just, get started and kind of figure out what it means to you, I think. But I think in your book, though, this means you kind of had to balance being prescriptive with allowing readers to find this own path. Would you agree with that? And is it a struggle to do?
It is very much about some of the life experiences that I've had, some of the life experiences of other people's pathways. It's really about taking that wisdom and synthesizing some of it ancient, some of it philosophy, and bringing in modern business strategy and psychology to say, how do we want to go forward in an impactful and deliberate way that really kind of moves beyond being a legend and actually creating legacy. So if you're interested in creating a legacy for generations to come, this is a repeatable formula that you can actually hand down to future generations and give them really what do they call that? A leg up.
Definitely. And it does give you that leg up, because otherwise, you're just going to believe life is always going to be that way. I know that's another one of your, main thoughts here, but I guess what you have to do that is just break people out of these limiting beliefs by using these methods. And I think it's wonderful that you've been doing it. So beyond the book and beyond these, alchemist approaches, I'm wondering, if there's anything else you'd like to share with us. I know you've been doing a ton of other work. You've got a huge boardroom presence, you've been scaling leadership, big talent for ambiguity and change. So tell us a little bit more. What is next on the radar for you now that you have the book out there? What can we be looking forward to learn more from what you've been doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would say in each of the various roles from, the Marine Corps to boardroom, elected official to entrepreneur, one of the commonalities that I experienced really in the beginning when I went into the military, it was really understanding that the human body is capable of 20 times more than the mind wants to believe it is. Okay. So when we start experiencing discomfort or pain, the brain says, ouch, stop, and tells you to back off. When in reality, you're capable of 20 times more from that point. And I think it was Muhammad Ali or Bruce Lee. I think it was Bruce Lee that would start counting his sit-ups when the pain started to make him feel uncomfortable. He's like, okay, now it's 1, 2. Why? Because that's where growth happens, in the discomfort. And so one of the things that I realized is that when clarity meets courage, everything changes. And that's really the leadership principle that you're going to find in the book, you're going to find in what I do, is that when clarity meets courage, everything changes, because that's telling you you're willing to get a little bit uncomfortable. And by doing that, but being persistent and consistent, it's really the reason why the tortoise always beats the hare, or the turtle beats the rabbit, right? Because the turtle just keeps on going, slow and steady, nobody notices, and the cocky rabbit stop. Well, you can't start a fire by starting and stopping. You have to have that constant friction. And so when we are like afraid of that friction, we're never going to get the spark. But once we have that, we still have to fuel it. And so what that's allowed me to do is accomplish those different various roles and adventures. So what does that look like now? Well, now I'm actually fractionally allowing myself to go in and serve companies at a very high level. So offering a fractional chief operations officer opportunity. I only take 2 on a year, because I'm looking to really 5x or bigger these companies. So they have to be established, and they have to have a record of they're a business, not a hobby. And they have the character and the culture that can go to those next levels. So that's a big kind of transition, is I've said, okay, raise the family, got the opportunity to do whatever I want. That's actually what's really exciting me, while I continue to keep my coaching practice at this boutique size that I have it. And then creating more adventure, like really personal opportunities for people to come and do a hands-on deep dive opportunities in New Zealand and Central America, and then places like Park City or in South Florida, places, people want to actually go.
Well, that would be really cool, by the way. I like the idea of, a destination. Would you consider that a retreat then? Almost. Or...
They're a bit retreat. The reason I kind of pause and say they're a little bit different than just a straight retreat.
Just like your philosophy, it's a little bit different than the norms.
It is. It's a little bit different, because one of the things that I learned along the way is when discomfort appears and when you want to give up, one of the fuels that will keep you on track is when Tony's organization, when he said, hey, I want to do an epic adventure that really pushes people into a huge growth opportunity. I said, I'll do it on one condition. He goes, okay, what's that? I said, you have to tie charity to the event. He goes, why? I said, because when you make it bigger than yourself and you have to make a public declaration, you can't just back out. People are counting on you, and you've given your word, and you're doing it for a cause that's bigger than you. And so these adventures are a little bit of a retreat, a little bit of contribution beyond yourself, because that's where we find purpose and fulfillment. So it's a unique alchemy formula that really creates powerful results.
And there we go, right back to alchemy. I love the way you're able to tie it back to that every time, which is an incredible thing for any authors listening today. You always need to come back to that main point that we have here, the alchemy behind it all. And that seems to be your overarching guidance to everybody, right? Just to implement everything you've said regarding the alchemy mindset.
Yep.
So all this being said, Chad, I'm wondering, you have these incredible, programs out there, all of that. How can we best get in touch if we're interested in joining you on these, or also staying up to date with the other endeavors that you are part of?
I keep it very simple. Just go to chadecooper.com. E is an echo, chadecooper.com. Now, we're in the midst, Danielle, of a major revamp, okay? So we're completely redoing the website and everything that's in there. I don't know, probably less than 30 days you'll see that. But that's where you're going to be able to find the events that we structure. It's fine. We have one coming up to New Zealand in October, I believe. And so that's an epic experience, but that's where you'll find the books and find free resources. You'll find out about the different services that I offer. And you're going to find out that we're rebranding. I'm actually removing myself as the brand and actually creating what's called the SIRV Institute, SIRV. Stands for Strength, Impact, Resolute, and Vitality. So if you want to know more about that, just stay tuned, because those are the 4 ingredients that allow you to repeatedly keep leveling up and create a legacy beyond just being a legend.
Okay, I love that. So we're going to put the link to that in the description box of this podcast today, even though it is a very simple link, which is wonderful. It's very easy to contact. So guys, if you're inspired by what Chad has talked about today, go click on those links and check it out, because obviously this is something that's not on the beaten path. It's something that is absolutely transformational. And if you're sitting there right now and you're feeling like you're just in that okay zone you described, you don't have to be fearful. Chad has mentioned many times on this podcast, fear is a roadblock, and he's offers all these different tips to go around it. So again, just go ahead and check it out. Check out his link. Check out Time Isn't the Problem as well. And Chad, I'm wondering, as we begin to wrap up today, is there any other pieces of advice that you'd like to share with us today, whether it be about alchemy or the writing process, or perhaps a little bit of both?
I appreciate that. And I want to leave one last thing. If you are struggling to say, how do I create that impact? How do I stay on course? How to build those habits? There's a principle called the 1 hour rule, okay? If you look at Titans who have honored that 1 hour rule, it's very simple, and it just says this, Danielle. In 24 hours, every single day, you need to carve out 1 hour a day to work on the thing that matters most. Okay? So the thing that you fear, everything you want is on the other side of that fear. So if you just break it down in small bite-sized pieces, 1 hour a day, you will get there, and you will actually cross the finish line to success. Now you go, an hour's too much. Great, 15 minutes. Start with 15 minutes and then increment it to 25, to 35, until you get to that 1 hour. But commit to, even if you just sit there, to honor that space and understand that sometimes solitude and just creating that silence is worth more than just doing random activity. So if you just hold that sacred space of that 1 hour rule, you will succeed.
I love that 1 hour rule, and that's a perfect thing for us to leave off with today. And you're right. I mean, sometimes you just need that moment, that time, and to think things over and process it and figure out what the next step's going to be. So I get that. I love it all. So thank you so much for all this. It's been some really insightful topics discussed today. And everybody, again, based on today's conversation, I think, again, implement that 1 hour rule, implement the other tactics mentioned. But I just have to say, your mission now is, should you choose to accept it, to look in the mirror and ask yourself Chad's questions. If you're not enjoying the success that you want, then why? So go ahead and fix it yourself, and because you have all the resources right at your fingertips now. Well, Chad, it's been a pleasure meeting you, and thank you so much for coming on and checking out your book, and of course all the incredible things that you're creating out there in the world for us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Of course, and to all of our listeners, until next time, keep writing your story with intention, because the world does need the unique experience that only you can provide. So this is Authors on Mission podcast, where we don't just discuss success, we dissect it, decode it, and help you deploy it. So without further ado, this is the end of the show, and please be sure to check out the other episodes. We'll see you next time on Authors on Mission podcast.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.